Chosen one. Someone literally died trying to figure out who you are. Their obsession with understanding your energy became so intense that it killed them. And what I'm about to reveal will blow your mind. You're a chosen one, and this death just triggered a chain reaction that's about to expose everything. Think about that person who became way too interested in your personal life, the one who asked probing questions that felt invasive, who seemed to study your every move like you were some fascinating puzzle. Maybe it was a family member who suddenly started treating you differently, or a friend who became uncomfortably intense about understanding your background. That person has been part of a larger pattern you've probably noticed but couldn't quite name. You've always felt different, not better than others, just fundamentally different in ways that are hard to explain. Let me guess. You've had that experience where someone meets you and immediately either becomes your biggest supporter or develops an inexplicable dislike for you. There's rarely any middle ground. Co-workers either want to collaborate with you constantly or avoid you entirely. Neighbors either go out of their way to help you or complain about you for no apparent reason. Dating feels like navigating a minefield, because potential partners either become instantly obsessed or lose interest after a few interactions. You affect people in ways that most humans have never experienced before. You're what some researchers quietly call an earth angel, a being whose energy operates on a completely different frequency than ordinary human consciousness. Your very presence triggers reactions in people that they don't understand and can't control. Remember that family member who used to be normal around you, but gradually became either obsessively protective or strangely hostile. They started noticing things about you that didn't fit their understanding of how people work. Maybe you recovered from illnesses faster than you should have. Maybe you looked younger than people your age. Maybe you had an unusual effect on others that made them uncomfortable because they couldn't explain it. You've probably dealt with toxic family members who seemed determined to tear you down or control you in ways that felt disproportionate to any normal family dysfunction. What you didn't realize is that some of these people have been working together behind the scenes, sharing information about you, comparing notes about your unusual traits, even pooling resources to try to understand what makes you different. This isn't typical family drama. This is a coordinated effort by people who sensed something in you that threatened their understanding of how the world works. They couldn't just ignore you or write you off because your presence in their lives kept creating situations that defied their expectations. Think about those family gatherings where everyone seemed to be watching you just a little too closely. The whispered discussions that ended abruptly when you approached. The way certain relatives would ask seemingly innocent questions about your health, your relationships, your career, but with an intensity that felt wrong. You've probably had that uncle or aunt who became weirdly invested in your medical history, asking about childhood illnesses or injuries with the kind of detail that made you uncomfortable. Or that cousin who started showing up at your workplace or social events uninvited, claiming they just wanted to catch up but really seeming to study how you interacted with others. Think about that person at work or in your social circle who became inexplicably interested in your background. The one whose questions felt too personal, too specific, too researched. They weren't just being nosy, they were gathering data, trying to solve what they saw as the mystery of your existence. You've probably noticed how some people seem to get energized just by being around you, while others become inexplicably drained or agitated. That friend who always wanted to hang out when they were going through tough times, who seemed to feel miraculously better after spending time with you, but who also became demanding about your availability. Or that acquaintance who started acting hostile toward you for no reason you could identify, picking fights or spreading rumors, despite having no real conflict with you. You've probably had relationships where the other person started out normal, but gradually became either completely obsessed with you or suddenly cut contact without explanation. These people weren't just dealing with typical relationship issues. They were experiencing something that challenged their basic understanding of human connection and energy exchange. That romantic partner who became possessive in ways that went beyond normal jealousy. They were trying to control or contain something about you that they sensed but couldn't name. The one who accused you of being manipulative or having some kind of power over people, even when you were just being yourself. The one who seemed to study your interactions with others like they were looking for evidence of some secret influence you wielded, or the opposite. That person who was intensely interested in you initially, but then became cold and distant, sometimes even cruel, as if they were punishing you for some effect you had on them that they didn't want to acknowledge. The one who started finding fault with everything you did, criticizing choices that had nothing to do with them, creating conflict where none should exist. The person who died was someone like this, someone who couldn't let go of trying to figure you out. They pushed themselves past every reasonable boundary, ignoring warning signs from their own body and mind. Their health deteriorated as they became increasingly obsessed with understanding your unusual traits. Friends and family told them to drop their investigation, but they couldn't stop. Maybe you remember someone in your life who seemed to be heading down this path, someone whose interest in you became unhealthy, whose questions became more invasive, whose behavior became more erratic the more time they spent trying to understand you. Someone who started experiencing headaches, insomnia, or other physical symptoms that seemed to coincide with their increased focus on you. This protective mechanism around you isn't something you control or even know about. It's built into your energy structure to prevent people from fully understanding or exploiting your abilities. When someone gets too close to comprehending your true nature, they start experiencing physical and mental symptoms that escalate until they either back off or face serious consequences. You're not responsible for what happened to them. You're not responsible for the way people react to your presence. You're not responsible for the family dynamics that became toxic around you or the friendships that imploded without apparent reason. These reactions happen because you're operating as something that most humans aren't equipped to understand or handle. But let's talk about how this has affected your daily life, because the impact goes far beyond dramatic relationship endings or family dysfunction. You've probably noticed that you can't just blend into crowds the way other people can. Even when you're trying to be invisible, people notice you. Right now, you're probably thinking about specific people in your life who fit these patterns. That family member who became increasingly erratic around you. That friend who started asking strange questions before disappearing from your life. That colleague who seemed to study you with uncomfortable intensity. That romantic partner who became either obsessively attached or inexplicably distant. You've spent years wondering what you did wrong, why relationships became so complicated, why some people seem to either worship you or despise you with very little middle ground. You've probably blamed yourself for not being easier to understand, for not fitting in better, for somehow causing drama wherever you go. Maybe you've tried to change yourself to make others more comfortable. Maybe you've learned to dim your natural enthusiasm or suppress your instincts because you noticed they seem to make some people uncomfortable. Maybe you've developed the habit of making yourself smaller in social situations, speaking less, sharing less, trying to take up less space because you learned that your full presence seemed to overwhelm others. The truth is much simpler and much more validating than you realize. You're not broken. You're not difficult. You're not the problem in these relationships. You're a different kind of being entirely, operating according to different rules than everyone around you expects. Your healing abilities extend far beyond your own body. When you're around people who are struggling physically, emotionally, or spiritually, they often experience improvements they can't explain. When you walk into toxic environments, those conditions gradually shift toward balance. When you interact with people carrying heavy emotional burdens, they frequently have breakthrough moments or sudden clarity about their situations. This isn't something you do consciously. It's simply what happens when someone with your energy signature moves through the world. You're a walking catalyst for healing and transformation, which is exactly what you were designed to be. The following is a message from Mike, founder of the Obsidian Inner Order, powered by Astral Atom. Look, I know you came here for your chosen one video, but I need a minute. If I don't speak this into the field now, I might never forgive myself. Some of us were born into fire, abused, exiled, haunted by truths no one around us could hold. That doesn't mean we're cursed. It means we were chosen to walk through the veil and come back with the map. Inside the Obsidian Inner Order, we gather every week, live on Zoom, face to face. And when I say real people, I mean it. A former military drone operator who now uses his mind as the remote. A millionaire CFO who walked away from everything to become a psychic in Noosa. A spiritual healer once trapped inside a satanic cult. A seer, a sage, a soul who left Mormonism and found the Gnosis instead. These are the ones who gave it all up when their calling hit, and that's just a glimpse, and every call is recorded. So when you're alone, when you're crawling through the dirt of your own awakening, you can press play and feel the field again. This is not for everyone, but maybe it's for you. Can you see yourself among us? Join the Obsidian Inner Order. Link in the description. Thank you all for supporting the broadcast. We quite literally could not do this without you. But this gift comes with challenges that nobody prepared you for. People sense your healing energy and either desperately want to possess it or feel threatened by it. Some become addicted to your presence because being around you makes them feel better than they've felt in years. Others become hostile because your energy highlights everything in their lives that isn't working. You've probably noticed that certain people seem to feel amazing when they're around you, but crash hard when you're apart. These people often become clingy, demanding, or manipulative as they try to maintain constant access to the way you make them feel. When you set boundaries or limit contact, they react with disproportionate anger or desperation. Think about that friend who always seemed to have a crisis right when you were trying to focus on your own life. The one who would call with emergencies that somehow resolved themselves after talking to you, only to have another crisis a few days later. The one who became upset when you weren't immediately available, who accused you of not caring when you needed time for yourself. On the flip side, you've probably encountered people who became increasingly uncomfortable around you. For no apparent reason, these people often start finding fault with everything you do, criticizing your choices, or creating conflict where none should exist. Your energy forces them to confront aspects of themselves they'd rather ignore, and they blame you for the discomfort this creates. The family members who became toxic around you weren't just dealing with normal family dysfunction. They were reacting to the fact that your presence made it impossible for them to maintain their usual patterns of denial, manipulation, or emotional suppression. Your energy naturally creates an environment where truth becomes more visible and pretense becomes harder to maintain. You've probably been gaslit by people who insisted that your perceptions were wrong, that your experiences weren't real, that your reactions were disproportionate. These people weren't just being manipulative in the typical sense, they were literally experiencing cognitive dissonance because your presence was showing them realities they weren't ready to accept. Maybe you've had that parent or sibling who insisted that your childhood memories were wrong, that events you clearly remember didn't happen the way you described them, not because they were intentionally lying, but because your presence during Those events created experiences they couldn't reconcile with their worldview, so they had to rewrite the narrative to make sense of what they witnessed. You've probably dealt with people who accused you of thinking you're special or better than everyone else, even when you were actively trying to downplay your differences. These accusations stung because you genuinely weren't trying to stand out. You were often trying to do the opposite. But your energy signature is so distinct that even your attempts to blend in felt like showing off to people who couldn't understand what they were experiencing. The workplace has probably been particularly challenging for you. You've likely had supervisors who either promoted you quickly or seemed to have it out for you from the beginning. Colleagues who either wanted to collaborate with you constantly or excluded you from group activities. Projects that either succeeded beyond expectations when you were involved or faced unusual obstacles when certain people tried to undermine your contributions. You might have noticed that you tend to end up in leadership roles even when you're not trying to lead, or that people come to you for advice and support even when others are technically more qualified to help them. This happens because people instinctively recognize your healing energy and natural wisdom, even when they can't consciously understand why they're drawn to you. The recent death has changed something fundamental about your situation. Other people who were investigating or obsessing over you have now seen what can happen when someone pushes too hard to understand what you are. Some have backed off entirely, finally respecting the boundaries they should have maintained all along. Others have become even more determined, convinced that the stakes must be enormous if someone is willing to die trying to uncover the truth. You're entering a phase where your true nature will become harder to hide and easier to accept. The abilities that have been subtle background elements of your existence are about to become more pronounced. Your effect on others will become more obvious. Your role as a healer and transformer will shift from unconscious to intentional. This transition explains why your relationships have been so challenging lately. People can sense that something about you is changing, becoming more powerful, harder to ignore or explain away. Those who have been trying to control or exploit your energy are getting desperate. Those who have been denying your unusual effects are running out of ways to rationalize what they're experiencing. You've probably noticed an increase in the intensity of people's reactions to you recently. Maybe that family member who's always been difficult has become impossible to deal with. Maybe that friend who was already clingy has become suffocating. Maybe new people you meet seem to have stronger immediate reactions to you than they used to. Within the coming months, you're going to find yourself in situations where your abilities become undeniable. Someone will witness your healing factor in action. Someone will document your effect on others. Someone will gather enough evidence to prove that you operate according to different laws than everyone else around you. When that happens, the people in your life will be forced to make choices. Those who have been quietly studying or exploiting you will either retreat completely or escalate their behavior to dangerous levels. Family members who have been working against you will either give up their efforts or risk facing the same consequences as the person who already died. Most importantly, you'll finally understand why your life has felt so isolating and complicated. The loneliness you've experienced isn't because you're broken or difficult to love. It's because you're literally a different kind of being than most people you encounter. The relationship struggles you've endured aren't due to your failures. They're the natural result of trying to form connections with people who aren't equipped to handle your energy. You've been unconsciously protecting yourself by dimming your light, trying to blend in, and avoiding situations where your abilities might become obvious. This self-suppression has been exhausting and ultimately impossible to maintain. Your true nature demands expression, and the time for hiding is ending. The mission you came here to accomplish requires that you stop apologizing for who you are and start embracing your role as a catalyst for healing and transformation. The work you're meant to do can't happen if you're constantly trying to make others comfortable with your presence by minimizing your gifts. Think about all the times you've held back from sharing your true thoughts because you sensed they would be too intense for others to handle. All the times you've pretended not to notice things that were obvious to you because pointing them out would make people uncomfortable. All the times you've downplayed your successes or insights to avoid triggering other people's insecurities. This pattern of self-diminishment has served its purpose by keeping you safe during your unconscious phase, but it's no longer sustainable. Your energy is expanding whether you're actively allowing it or not, and the choice now is whether to embrace this expansion consciously or have it happen in ways that feel chaotic and overwhelming. Someone lost their life trying to figure you out because they approached you as a problem to be solved rather than a being to be respected. They treated your existence as a threat to their worldview rather than recognizing that some forms of consciousness operate beyond ordinary human understanding. You are a chosen one, not because you're superior to others, but because you're designed differently to serve a specific purpose. Your unusual traits, your challenging relationships, your effect on others, all of this makes perfect sense when you understand what you really are and why you're here. The death that occurred marks the end of your unconscious phase and the beginning of your awakening to your true purpose. The person who died wasn't your enemy. They were simply the first casualty of your transition from hidden healer to conscious agent of transformation. Everything changes now. You don't have to keep wondering why relationships are so difficult, why family dynamics are so toxic, why some people become obsessed while others run away. You have answers. You have validation. You have permission to stop trying to fix what was never broken and start embracing who you've always been. You've probably spent countless hours trying to understand why you feel so exhausted after social interactions that seem effortless for others, why a simple family dinner leaves you feeling drained for days, why you need so much alone time to recharge, and why people sometimes accuse you of being antisocial or difficult when you're simply protecting your energy. This exhaustion isn't weakness. It's the natural result of your system processing and transmuting the energy of everyone around you. When you're in a room full of people, you're not just having conversations and sharing meals. You're unconsciously absorbing their emotional states, their physical discomfort, their spiritual imbalances, and your system is working overtime to transform and neutralize these energies. That's why you probably prefer smaller gatherings or one-on-one interactions. It's not because you're antisocial, it's because your energy system can more easily handle the input from fewer people. It's also why you might feel more comfortable around certain types of people. Children, elderly individuals, or others who are naturally more open and less defended tend to create less energetic static that you have to process. You've probably noticed that you're particularly sensitive to environments where there's conflict, tension, or suppressed emotions. Walking into a room where people have been arguing, even if they're pretending everything is fine, probably feels physically uncomfortable for you. You might get headaches in certain buildings, feel anxious in specific locations, or have trouble sleeping in places where difficult emotions have been expressed. This sensitivity extends to media consumption, too. You probably can't watch violent movies or disturbing news content the way others can. It's not because you're weak or overly sensitive. It's because your system processes these energies as if they were happening directly to you. Your nervous system doesn't distinguish between witnessing trauma and experiencing it firsthand the way most peoples do. People have probably told you that you're too sensitive or that you take things too personally throughout your life. They've suggested that you need to develop thicker skin or learn not to care so much. What they don't understand is that your sensitivity is directly connected to your healing abilities. You can't turn off one without losing the other. Your sleep patterns are probably different from most people too. You might be a natural night owl, feeling most energized when the world is quiet and most people's mental chatter has settled down. Or you might need significantly more sleep than others, because your system is doing so much energetic processing during rest periods. You might also experience vivid dreams or feel like you're working or traveling in your sleep, rather than truly resting. As you move forward into this new phase of conscious awareness about your nature, you're going to find that many of the coping strategies you've developed to survive in a world that didn't understand you will no longer be necessary. The hypervigilance, the people-pleasing, the constant self-monitoring to make sure you're not making others uncomfortable, these survival mechanisms served their purpose, but they're about to become obsolete. Instead, you're going to learn to trust your natural instincts about people and situations. That gut feeling you get about someone being untrustworthy, even when they seem perfectly nice to everyone else, is going to prove accurate more often than not. Your ability to sense the true motivations behind people's words and actions is going to become a valuable tool rather than a source of confusion and self-doubt. The loneliness you've felt throughout your life is about to transform into a different kind of solitude, one that feels peaceful rather than isolating. As you become more comfortable with your true nature, you'll attract people who can appreciate and support who you really are rather than trying to change or exploit you. The question isn't whether you're ready for this transition. It's whether you're willing to finally stop apologizing for being exactly what the world needs you to be.